Hello, everyone. So, Munir Azuzi here speaking. I hope everybody is joining now. As usual, when we are doing this kind of session, if you can just say hello and maybe where you are from, and then we can start to introduce the topic and also introduce our guests because we have some people that will be helping us on this subject. The subject of today is mainly software as a medical device, class 1. So we have a lot of question about is my software. We receive a lot of question about is my software a class 1 medical device. So now we'll try to see if today we'll give you the right answer for your software, maybe future software, because mainly this is one of the biggest question for software. So we have Nilesh. Hi, Nilesh. Hi, Murad. Hi, Jeremy. Hi, Ronnie. Just say to me also where you are from, so that we see exactly. If you are listening to me from all over the world or just in Switzerland, because I'm located in Switzerland, and then we can look at the different persons. Okay, so we have more people. So hey, Patrick from France. Henny Lima. Hel Ahmad from Germany, Alex from Spain, hey, Maurizio from Italy, Nicole, hello, David, hello, Marta, hello, from Paris, Munich, UK, CA for California, I suppose, I don't know. Hi, Claire from Barcelona, hi, Magdalena from Norway. Hi, there is some name. Hey, Christian from I think Netherlands. No, Sweden. Yes, Sweden. So Christian, a big software guy. So I hope all what we'll say will be correct for him. Alexander from Israel. Anil from Africa. Dr. Karim from Vienna. Rachel from UK. Oh, Paolo from Colombia. Hi, Paolo. Mate from Budapest. Oh, so we have from all over the world. Nilesh again from India. So we have from all over the world. So thank you again for joining. As we said, so today we have a session where we'll talk about software as medical devices. Specifically, we'll try to explain class 1 medical device because there was a lot of question about class 1 medical device for software. And maybe a lot of people that are listening today, you are a class 1 medical device software and under MDD, and now you move to MDR. So are you still a class 1 under MDR, or should you increase your classification? And we can talk about that. And we have for that also some guests today. So we have Oliver and Stefan that will be just coming. So how it will be working now. So we'll do a small explanation of the context for software as medical devices for MDD and MDR. Also, we'll talk a bit of also this transition period and of some guidances that are existing. And what we'll do after is mainly to open for questions so that you will have also the chance to ask your question and then maybe also provide your comments on what is existing actually on the regulation, if it is enough or not, if there is some changes also. Okay, so let's have Oliver and Stefan entering now. Hey, Oliver. Hey, Stefan.
Hello.
Can hear you? Yeah.
I'm Munir.
Hey. So thanks for joining. So as I mentioned, the idea is mainly to talk about software as class 1 under MDR. But before to start, maybe just a small introduction of yourself. So Oliver, maybe you can start first.
Yeah, thanks again, Munir, for having me here. So my name is Oliver Higgers. I'm heading the Digital Health and Innovation unit at C+, focusing on also a strong passion on medical device software and a little extra focus on the German digital healthcare applications like the DGAS and DPAS. You might have heard of them. It's also something I'm always happy to support.
Great. Thanks for that. And you, Stefan, we know you, but tell us again.
Hello, I'm Stefan Bolleininger from BioQuality GmbH. Fun thing is, I think nearly no one knows me better than Oliver does, because we had a so long relationship that's, well, really, really long. I was nearly a kid at that time. And yes, it's very nice for having me, and I'm very happy to discuss the topics was the class 1, the medical device software, and my main focus is all active medical devices, and and what all the things which happens to them, like testings and whatever stuff.
Exactly, and let's inform again that a software under MDR and under MDD was also an active medical device. So this is mainly the definition for software, and this is what we will be focusing on. So software specifically. So just maybe a small summary, if I can say, of maybe your experience with software before under MDD and now under MDR. Is it, if I can say, easier? Is it more difficult? Or is it, there is no difference here between MDD and MDR? Oliver, maybe?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think we can also take this directly as an opportunity for our little disclaimer we wanted to say, because when you provided the teaser for your podcast, it had a little bit of a "you better call Saul" flavor in terms of
exactly.
we can provide the ultimate free ride on the MDR Class 1 train, which is of course not possible still. Nevertheless, there are differences, but I would say that the ultimate free ride was under MDD with the Rule 12, because the Rule 12 had so many, freedom in terms of whether you would fall under it. So that's where you had a lot of software that should be maybe differently classified. And it was also one of the key reasons why there was a change needed. I think we all agree it was not the right change, but definitely there was a change required. Stefan, what do you say?
I'm just showing quickly what is the Rule 12 for people. So Rule 12 is all other active devices are in Class 1. So it's easy. It's like the big bucket where everything is inside. So if it's a software and it's not covered by the previous rule, so then it's a Class 1 device. So it makes it a bit easy, if I can say, for some manufacturers. Even if some software were higher than Class 1, even if they are software. It's not like all software are Class 1. There are some software that are Class 2 or to be under the MDD.
Exactly. And well, I do not like all that focusing on the Class 1 or the Class 2 or the Class B, because that's the organization. That's the organizational thing and the conformity assessment system. The quality in the software is not developed by its classification. The quality of the content of the technical documentation is not depending on the classification. That's depending on what standards you're using and how you do it. So if it's a Class 1 or a Class 2A, it just makes it different in the registration or in the clearing process with you if you have a notified body. But you deliver the quality and the functionality as well as the correctness in documentation, and that's equal. That's equal on both classes. Only difference in the who reviews what. So, and that's something which many people forget and say, hey, yes, it's Class 1. I can do whatever I want. No, that's not the point. That's not the point. The point is technical documentation is same.
And it's what mainly the issue is the fact that when we say Class 1, we say self-certified, and then it's like the Far West, it's like nobody's checking, nobody's looking, nobody's there. But the point is mainly, even if it's a Class 1 self-certified, you have the obligation to have a technical file, you have the obligation to have a quality management system, you have the obligation to write this declaration of conformity where you are saying, I declare or I certify that I am following the legislation, etc. So it's like a letter saying, I am committing to do this and that. So if you are not doing that, so set yourselves nothing. So mainly this is the issue also when we are talking about Class 1. People like, or manufacturers like to be Class 1 because they have more freedom in terms of that. The point is that don't forget that even if you don't have a notified body under Class 1, you have the health authority that has the power to come and visit you, audit you, check you, or close your company, if I can say, or stop your business. So you have also to be careful of that, because when they will come, they will ask you the same document, the technical file, declaration of conformity, quality management system, etc. So it's something that is really, really, really important. In terms of, so this is MDD. Apparently, MDR has really revolutionized software. So software was already existing under MDD, but now under MDR, it's like a different story here.
Yeah, agree. I think it's similar to the let's say IVD transformation. So under MDD, you had a lot of other IVDs, so similar to Class 1, and now you have this big shift to the IVDR, and for software it was the same. So you had the MDD, a lot of software was under class 1, and now you theoretically you have a big change. So a lot of software, if you just purely look at the Rule 11, if you literally read it, then more or less everything needs a notified party. And as often, maybe under MDD, we had kind of a, let's say, under regulation for software. And I think if you look at the Rule 11, it's kind of the opposite. It's it sounds like rather an over regulation, and I think both is not correct. So the middle should be found, and I think that's one of the goals for today, to contribute to get more clarity. That there is not black and white here. There's something in between as well.
Exactly, and the issue is that, as I've said, the way the way that the Rule 11 is written, from the first sentence, it's like software intended to provide information which is used to take decisions with diagnosis or therapeutic purposes is classified as class 2A. So, I mean, nearly, if I can say, say 99% or 98% of software, they have to get some information so that they can take a decision. If there is an input and an output, this is mainly how software are working. So which makes it really difficult to say, am I really under this class 2A, or should I, because I will not kill people, it's class 3, or I will not create any irreversible deterioration of the person, or there is no serious deterioration of the person, etc., and I'm not monitoring the physiological process, etc., all those things. Then at the end, I'm class 1. So first you have to pass the first sentence barrier to then arrive to class 1 at a minimum. So this is the difficulty for some companies to say, yeah, but my software has some inputs, and at the end the output is helping to take a decision or therapeutic thing. So how would you, if I can say, help people to pass this barrier or understand this context here?
Well, that is you highlighted it quite well. That is the decision point where you need to take into, and you see about provide information to take decisions with diagnostic or therapeutic purpose. So you need someone who takes a decision out of that information for diagnostic or therapeutic purpose. And that means you need to have someone who has a competence, the knowledge, and the awareness about taking a therapeutic or diagnosis decision. And that is our first attempt, where I very strongly believe into that this is one of the main things we need to encounter. And based on that, it is up to the manufacturer to decide, okay, is my software for diagnostic and therapeutic purpose or not? And for us, what we have experienced from my side, and I'm pretty sure Oliver has the same experience that we do, is that in many software products which are nowadays on the market, which have been a class 1 since 20 years, not millions, 20 years. As those tend to have a different focus. So they focus more onto the patient side. I'm a patient. I have no clue about diagnostic and therapeutic decisions. So I cannot do that. I am legally not allowed. And also I cannot do it. And that is my first break point, where I would say, can I decide on my product if that has a professional? And then Oliver and I had long discussions about the borderline manual. You love a borderline manual. And
the new one.
Sorry?
The new one.
You can take the old one, you can take the new one, but the new one is way better because there's every calculator is a super high class product, but there is one very, very little wording, and that calls healthcare professional. Okay. And that's exactly the way what we attempt to try to do, but it needs to be, and that is the point, solely if the software provides the information mainly or partly for the diagnostic and therapeutic purpose, it's done.
Okay, yeah. Oliver?
Yeah, I agree. So it's really about, if you look at the definitions of diagnosis, it usually includes healthcare professional. You need this type of expert to really take this decision. So as long as you have a software that is rather focusing on the patient, doesn't necessarily mean that the healthcare professional is always excluded in your software. But if the focus is to support the patient first, and maybe the health professional rather for, let's say, speeding up processes for admin activities. Then nevertheless, if the focus is on the patient, then this would not be considered to be a therapeutic or a diagnostic decision, because the patient will just usually follow what the software is providing. And that brings us to the next topic, where maybe the software can provide kind of a therapy. So you have a lot of software that provides cognitive behavioral therapy, for example. But usually, that's the difference here when you look at the Rule 11. The decision that the software should conduct this kind of cognitive behavioral therapy has already been made up front. So the healthcare professional already made the decision, said, we need to do a therapy, and I will recommend that you use this app to execute, this my therapy. But the decision has already been taken up front, and that is to us always the borderline. And as long as the software does not provide feedback to the healthcare professional again, so he might need to adapt the therapy or say you have to do it differently, then of course it's a different topic then, because then you provide feedback, and that will have an influence on the decision of the healthcare professional. But if it's just purely executing the decision of the healthcare professional, then from our point of view, the Rule 11, the first part, does not apply here.
Okay, so a really interesting discussion, because what does it mean? It means that at a certain point of your chronological, if I can say, pathway, there is a point where there will be a decision that should be made. Any software that is used before to go through this decision and maybe taken by a professional is then maybe going through this first sentence, so then it's going to be maybe class 2A. But anything that is used after, so the decision is already made, the therapeutic is already decided, you have to do this, you have to do these exercises, etc., with maybe a software like an application that you have to look up, down, etc. But it's more of the exercises. This can, if I can say, summarize, really go to the class 1 at the bottom, because this first sentence is not applicable anymore. Is it correct?
Exactly.
Yes, but it is a very fine line between that. We need to be on that end, also on the output end, very, very, very carefully. I do not, and I think Olive also, do not want to say that everything which is used after the physician made the decision is a class 1. That is not what we want to attempt.
Okay.
But, and that would be pretty unfair to say that way. Yeah. But the point is, yes, if you are beyond the decision and it clears out what the physician has decided, then you have a higher chance to be a class 1 product. And then you still need to decide if it has a loop, it has a feedback, it has a monitoring, because if it has a loopback, a feedback, or a monitoring, it always smells like a class 2A or class 2B cell.
Yeah, and Munia, I think I would, easily speaking, is if you are after this decision executing the therapy, then you would have overcome this first, let's say, hurdle in the Rule 11. It doesn't mean that you end up in class 1. There are other hurdles. We have seen them in the bullet points.
Exactly.
And there's one which is not in there, but I always tell the clients, and Stefan as well, which is having the actual harm in mind for a class 1, which would be the maximum for a class 1 device. But yes, at least can go to the next. It can say, okay, first one is a check mark in terms of it's not applicable for me. I can go on in the Rule 11 and see whether everything else or anything else is applicable for my product.
Exactly, and here we see the things, software intended to monitor physiological process is classified as class 2A, except if the monitoring is vital, so then it can be class 2B, etc. So this is not just the point where we have to make a decision. After that, yes, there are some software, as long as they are here to monitor, to verify some physiological process, they have to be also classified as class 2A or class 2B at the end. So yeah, as we said, also kind of a disclaimer to say, all what we are talking about is dependent on your software, on your intention, on who it is from, etc. So it's a case-by-case study. So we have really to work with some professionals, some experts, to really make your product as one of this classification, which is more difficult with MDR now, but it's still possible. So we have still this possibility here. I would just
very importantly, we should also maybe then talk about the the topics like prediction, prognosis, and
Yeah.
prevention, because this is also something, if you look at the Rule 11, it says diagnosis or therapeutic decisions. If you look at the definitions, there are more medical purposes, and there's still something where, since the MDD did not distinguish between all these topics, it just had a diagnostic and therapeutic topics, but not prediction and prognosis. We see there's a reason why they have made a distinguishment in the definition. As this is not reflected in the Rule 11, there's definitely room for interpretation to say that this is not applicable. So if you have a software that predicts or prognoses, then it does not fall under this first part of the Rule 11, because this is usually not, or cannot be taken for a therapeutic decision or for a diagnostic decision, because it's upfront still.
Exactly. So imagine now that I have a software that is calculating, if I can say, a potential risk to get a certain disease, like you get 90% of risk or 50% of risk, etc. You say that this is not like taking any decision or taking any prognosis or the diagnostic or whatever. It's just a calculation. It's nothing else.
That's actually, since the beginning of the Rule 11, that was my opinion to do that, is a 3P, prediction, prognosis, prevention, as a class 1. But and then it went so well until the borderline manual came. Because that is also simple scoring into it, into the higher classifications. But there is also the really fine line who uses it for which reason of prediction or prognosis. For example, if it's a prediction and or a prognosis, and it's used within a hospital, then it has a higher possibility to go into the class 1 or class 2B or class 2A. If it is still home tracking, you're still out.
Okay. So
but that is it's actually looking into all of the rules. The rule set is not technically, it's not so bad. So when you think of first overregulation, yes, then you look about that circumstances, that's okay. And then you look into the borderline, okay, you have also the prognosis parts, you have the parts of treatment after decision, and then actually in the higher classifications, a little level where the physician decides about diagnostic and therapy is limited. It looks not so bad after all.
Yeah. No, but for example, take the ProCam test, the prediction of a heart infarction within the next 10 years. Would even if a doctor would use it, I wouldn't see this, that it relates to Rule 11 in terms of, taking a diagnostic or therapeutic decision, because it's 10 years away.
Yes.
So even if the doctor is using it, to me, it doesn't make sense to have this one as a class 2A, because I rather even think that the approach from the MDR saying that these kind of simple, approaches are not even a medical device. That would be my preference even. But these are the examples where I see all these differences or these challenges, where quickly you get these kind of simple software into a class 2A, which to me makes no sense.
Yeah, and I have few of those examples with some of my customers that are calculators, if I can say, and making prediction to say, as I've said, you have 98% of chance. It's just like taking all the the literature's information to then create some kind of software to just calculate what the literature is saying, and at the end it's a prediction to say you have 98% chance to have osteoporosis or this kind of thing, etc., which is just a prediction, but we don't know if this is really true or not. So yeah, these are really the fine lines where people can be, the vocabulary is important, that we can fall under multiple, if I can say, decisions, and this is why it's really difficult topic here, and to be careful to not take all the information provided here to just make a decision on your software, because each software is really, really different. I just wanted to take a few questions from people. I have this one, so from David, that says, aren't patients allowed to make decisions in some jurisdictions? Because you are saying that mainly it's a physician that has to do a decision or for diagnosis or therapeutic purpose. I don't know which jurisdiction, so maybe if David can tell, but there are maybe some places where it is allowed for them to take decision by themselves.
In Germany, the diagnosis is solely on therapeutic decision is solely given to a physician. Any human can do that, or at least can try that, but it's not binding at all. And for at least in Germany, and therefore there are a lot of possibilities, or also countries where it is technically everyone can take a decision. Hey, I have a heart failure. I have a built-in heart failure. So, yes, I can take my own decisions on that. But if I want to have a diagnosis of therapy, I go to a physician because they know what they do. And that's the same what you should. It has in most regulations, your restrictions, that you will have to have an expert with a certain level of a degree or a study to take that decisions. And therefore, yes, principally they are allowed to do that kind of. However, that is not what is calculated as a decision or a therapeutic decision or a diagnostic decision in the EU MDR rule set.
And is it like the manufacturer who decides who should take the decision for this kind of thing, to say only physicians can take decision? I mean, they put always this disclaimer that all information provided can be used as an information only. If you really want something, you have to go to a physician, etc. So mainly this is also something that the manufacturers have to place on their product to be
exactly.
On the safe side.
I mean, otherwise you cannot, also you cannot conduct your usability testing. I mean, you have to define your user profile, and therefore you need to define in your labeling, in your instruction for use, who is your intended user, and therefore you will also create your usability testing for. So it's definitely mandatory to have this defined.
Exactly. And another question from I don't know who, because it's a LinkedIn user. So how do you compare this to FDA? So are we what we are saying today with all those diagnoses, therapeutic purpose, prognosis, etc.? Is it? Do you know if there is any difference here with the FDA rules? Because the FDA is also having a lot of guidances on software.
Yes, FDA has other rule set than we have in Europe. They don't have rules, they have regulation IDs, and the regulation IDs decide the classification. So solely for today, actually within that LinkedIn Live, we are speaking around the European system and the European classification class 1. But I tend to that we can do an additional one for US or something like that.
Okay. In terms of Asif has a good question. I mean, it's a question that you discussed about, but mainly just to clarify again. So suppose the software is here to measure some parameters of the patient body, but the decision goes directly to the healthcare professional. I suppose like it's sent to them. And then does this make the device like a class 1 because the decision is not taken by the software, but by the professional?
This is a typical one of the typical topics when you need to qualify a medical device software. Of course, it's not like, if a software like this provides you sufficient information that you can take a decision, even if the physician will make this decision alone, then it doesn't mean that the software is not a medical device, because this would be usually called the clinical decision support software then, and this is falling under the definition of a medical device. So you have to really make sure that you cannot exclude a software just by saying the final conclusion always comes from the physician and not from the software. So it will have an influence on your classification, of course,
exactly.
But not on the qualification whether it's a medical device. But here in this case, if you provide the information and he will make the decision based on it, then very likely, if it's for therapeutic or diagnostic purposes, it will be tier 2A or higher, depending on what parameters he's providing.
Exactly. I think this is important that, as soon as we said in the timeline, as soon as we have a time where there is some diagnostic or therapeutic decision to take, if it's done by the physician, because many is done by that, but if it's a software that gathers information that will be used then for this physician to do this take this decision, then it goes under this rule, so class 2A here. An interesting question, because something that can maybe also be surprising for some people. So could an SAMD be a class 1M? Because we talked about prediction, prognosis, where there is some kind of measurement. And if we make it like a class 1, as we said that it's ridiculous to make it like class 2A to B, can it be a class 1M also because there is some measuring function, or no, it's not really qualified for this kind of thing? Interesting, huh?
Yeah. I'm thinking about a wound measurement tool for patients.
yeah, exactly. It's something that I mean the wording are really important, and I don't know if in the EU MDR there is really some wording that disqualifies software to be class 1M, or it's qualified. So then the point is, even if it's class 1, if it's class 1M, it has to go through also a notified body and then get a C certificate from a notified body, etc., etc. So this is the thing that can be also a bit tricky.
The question is quite good, and actually I could think about, yes, why not? Because it could have legal units, it could have an applied accuracy, and also it could have an anatomy parameter which is read. So it's when Oliver talks about the prediction prognosis of a wound measurement system and the prediction how fast the wound will close. With a software, that could be actually pretty possible if you get the data into that, which will be pretty fine without having physics. And well, technically possible.
Yeah. And
but funny.
That's why I think it's always very important, to always have in mind that we are often talking about can we overcome this first, let's say, challenge in the Rule 11, this first part. But because even if we talk about this 1M, I think in the end it's depending on the intended use and the risk, even for the patient. If it's only for the patient, even in that case, we have to understand what's the harm for the patient involved in this software. So that even if you would overcome this first part in Rule 11, it might lead you to 2A again, because the risk is that the harm is too high for a class 1, and therefore you need a notified body. So this always have this in mind, because it's quickly going into the direction in the discussion, maybe that people assuming that we just need to overcome this first part in the Rule 11, then we are done. We have the class 1. So that's not the case, of course.
Exact. Right. So another question here, which is more about some examples. So from Milesh, so can we just provide as information only few examples of what is a class 1 and class 2A? The reason also is I will just give you that line here. We have here the MDCG, so MDCG guidance 2019-11. So this is our guide for software qualification and classification. And when you look inside, they are giving you some examples. And one of the examples, the only example that we find, for example, for a class 1, is this example of a medical device software intended to support the conception by calculating the user's fertility status, etc. It gives even some indicators like red, green, yellow things. And then it's a class 1 per Rule 11C. So can we provide some other examples of maybe class 1? Maybe we talked also a bit of some of them, like the ones that are used for prognosis prediction. So is there some clear example of some class 1 devices that are really class 1 per Rule 11?
Maybe, Munir, before we go to that, I think this example is worth to discuss for a minute.
Okay.
Because one of the, let's say, key challenges for every manufacturer when he's reading this example is the why is missing. The regulatory why is missing in this example. It does not explain you why it is a class 1. There's no clear rationale in it. So there are always, let's say, two angles why you could say it's a class 1 device. So one is, of course, as we discussed, it says it's a prediction. So then we can say prediction. So you could have kind of an underlining of what we discussed. It says predicting, therefore it's class 1. There could be one approach to say it's class 1. The other approach is, of course, it talks about the support conception, which, if you look at the definition of a medical device, you have the first bullet points, which always tell you let's say, the typical medical purpose that the medical device should have, like therapeutic, diagnostic, whatever. And then later on, later in the definition, it says, and there are also things like conception and contraception.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this could also be the argument to say, okay, this is not really a medical purpose. It is a purpose laid out later in the definition, this conception. And that is the reason why it's class 1. But, let's say the good and bad of this example is it doesn't give you a good explanation why. This is really something that's missing here. And therefore, there's room for interpretation. And therefore, you could say prediction is mentioned here. And therefore, you have this kind of conclusion. Prediction is not part of Rule 11.
Yes.
Could be one approach.
And that is one of the things Oliver has very good distilled in that point here, because that is actually something which might lead from, yes, it is not diagnostic, not therapeutic, blah, 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 all from the beginning article. And then it goes to, and it is prediction. And then you got it, because, or you go first on the support of conception, then you're out of it. And this specific example aligns prediction with support of conception as having the same height of quality and harm on the device, which makes it, for the regulatory standpoint and how to explain a class 1 better, because they say it is same, equalized, and then it is equalized to be used. And that's good for explaining why it is. However, the example taken by itself is not the best one. And also the MDCG is, and that point with the class 1, I think a bit, yes, a bit, let's call it careful on describing it. It's also with the chart, which is in the guidance, is also very careful not to take the class 1 into account. But hey, it is what we will need to live for, and that's why we're here to discuss that. What is our opinion on?
Exactly, yeah. In terms of examples, as we said, so we have this thing. So there was just this additional question from Nilesh from is pulsometer software? What is the classification for that? So just maybe quickly, do you have some idea of this thing, or
what is the outcome of the data?
Yeah.
When the outcome of the pulsometer data is for myself to quantify myself and look for my perspective, for me with a heart failure to look into my own decisions, look into my specifics, looking into that, I could either qualify it as non-medical device software, so as a fitness. The other one would be that I say, okay, this kind of data is available. However, the data has no impact on anything, but it is a medical data, which I tend not to do. And then if it is a real pulsometer software, which I can take decision, pulse is a vital parameter. So you could also consider class 2B.
Okay, so the intended purpose, the usages, I mean, we have really to do this exercise of intended purpose, intended use, exactly, so that you are really qualifying correctly these things.
Maybe Munir, some examples for class 1. The typicals are these cognitive behavioral therapies, which I mentioned. These are usually class 1, unless, of course, the indication is critical. So if you have, severe depression, then it's a different topic from my point of view. But if it's not a critical condition you are treating with this, then very often this will end up in class 1.
Okay, so here we have another example, and it's maybe something that can be related to a bit what you said, but not everything. So there, Alex Lopez Fernandez says that we provide software for making people able to take their rehabilitation therapy remotely via watching some exercise videos selected by a facultative professional user and doing them as patient users. Then they reply to a questionnaire to send the information to the rehabilitator, so they monitor their performance, etc. So this kind of device, what do you think? It's like I'm watching some YouTube videos, I'm making the exercises, and then after my exercise, I answer some question to say, I feel less pain, or I have something like that. So, and then I send that to my therapist. So,
Oliver, do you want first, or shall I first?
Please go ahead.
Okay. So, Munir, can you keep it on the screen?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so the first thing is the first part, showing me videos like it was on the card boxes in the earlier times, not qualifying as a medical device. And then comes the frustrating part. The frustrating part is, hey, now I sign it in a questionnaire, give my information to my physician about, I utilized this kind of therapy digitalize that therapy, utilize that, give feedback. That feedback will be taken into account by the physician again. So if that is nothing automated, then it is just selection of videos by a physician what you shall watch. No medical device. So as soon as you, please correct me if I'm wrong, Oliver, but that's my opinion. As soon as you start with automating that and calculating it, trending that kind of scores, then becomes a medical device, and then it's a physician's tracking. So it's a physician's tracking, it's not your own, it's a physician. And then we go to class 2A or a class 2B in some cases with a rehabilitation as well. And that is
maybe some guidance here for manufacturers. So first of all, if you're having some similar approaches here as a manufacturer, when you have this kind of prosa text we are seeing now, break this down into a table, into different sentences, and then look at each one, because we are talking about, for each of the sentences, kind of a functionality. So then break this down into your functionalities, and then evaluate it. So if you look at the first one, as Stefan said, if you just provide videos, it's like YouTube. This is not a medical device. The second one, clinical questionnaires. Stefan, you're exactly. If it's as soon as we have a questionnaire that deals with scoring and with calculations, then Stefan already mentioned the borderline manual. At least in the European framework, you are getting into the medical device framework with this kind of approach. Although MHRA, for example, looks differently on that if it's simple calculations. But nevertheless, under MDR, theoretically, clinical questionnaires, if they relate to scoring, so you have to do some calculations with your software. And for a medical purpose, in this case, for monitoring, then of course you're in as a medical device. If these questionnaires are you have to just enter text and then you transmit this to this person, then again, to me, it's a different story, because it's just sending information, it's transmitting only. And therefore, then you could say this is, of course, a clinical software, but not for medical purpose, because the software itself didn't do anything with this information. It just delivers it. It's like like the videos, or like using a phone to send something or to make a video conference call. So therefore, it is very important that you break down your functionalities and then go through each of it and see, is the software doing something here on top of the existing information or data? If not, then in most of the cases, it might not even be a medical device.
Yeah, clear. I think it's clear. As we said, nothing is black or white. There is a lot of gray. So we have to really look at each of the, as you said, sentences to really be sure. There was also an interesting one. So we talk a lot about EU MDR, where we have this classification, class 1, 2A, 2B, 3, etc. There is also alignments to do with the IEC 62304. And we've seen also that, like to say from Hamad Reza, so says that probabilities, if it is class 1 under MDR, it will be class A under IEC 62304. So what do you think about that?
Well, generally, you should not make a direct correlation between those two, because the standard allows you to already consider external mitigations on your software, including healthcare professionals or procedures, which can lower, of course, your safety class. While for the classification, you cannot do that. You have to really purely look at the software and what can go wrong. You cannot already think about any kind of watchdogs or whatever you might want to use to make sure that it works. It's just purely the intended purpose you have to look at. And therefore, I always try to distinguish here. I mean, on the other way around, for example, if you can have a class 3 product, but it doesn't necessarily mean that all of your software in it is class C. It can also be class A, depending on what of mitigations you have on top of it. So the other way around, distinguish, Stefan. Do you have something in mind?
I think that is a comment to one of the sentences I give earlier in that call, to say, hey, it does not matter if you're a class 1 or a class 2B, you need to deliver a good documentation on your software. And yes, in that cases is yes, if you have a 62304 class A, class B, and class C, that defines on your documentation content a lot. a lot. The classification of the medical device does not qualify that in that extent. And therefore, yes, that comment is, when you are a class 1 medical device, you have a, let's say it like that, you have a higher likelihood to be a class A software instead of when you are class 3 software, where you will have most likely not the high likelihood that your software is totally class A.
Exactly.
So, however, the correlation there is not direct. It can happen that way. It can happen into class 2B or a class software 6234 class B with a class 1, class 2A, class 2B, or class 3 device. So there's lots of things. And actually, one of my former mentors from the medical device space always told me a class A software should not exist. You should always do the things from class 2B. For class B, sorry.
Yeah, because
but that's an interpretation.
No, I'm seeing sometimes on some customers that are sending us their technical file or documentation or quality management system. They are talking about that, and in one side they classify the medical device as class 2B, which is dangerous and can maybe kill people, etc. And in the other side, the software is classified as class A, which is not dangerous, cannot kill anybody, etc. So this is mainly the misalignment that we have sometimes. But yes, you are right. There is no correlation as long as you are having the right intended purpose for each of those, and that you are telling the same thing. Maybe it's not the classification are not in the same ruler, so it's not possible maybe to align them, but just to be consistent and have some common sense to when you are doing this kind of things. Yeah.
So the funny thing is, with software, all the manufacturers are super advanced, and most manufacturers super advanced in the class A as well as a classification scheme. When you look into the same topics about biocompatibility, when you calculate how much time you need to estimate for long term or for the medical device as well for the biological testing, it's totally different. So there is the awareness not so high, and that's good for the software manufacturers because they have a high awareness also of the 6234 and what they need to do, and that is what the technical documentation and the MDR shall aim, that you have a good awareness and good technical documentation.
Exactly. I have an interesting one also here, which is why not there is a class 1 in the Annex 3 usability of the EMDRF. So do you know about that, or is it a sensitive question?
I tend not to answer that. It should be there. It should be there, but it is not written, and the guys who made it I'm pretty sure they had their thinkings about. However, always think about this chart is for information and for referencing reason. It's not to be taken into account as the truth of EUMDR.
Okay. Another one here, which is more about something that we know because mainly it's mentioned on the MDCG 2019-11, but to be mentioning again, there is also the qualification as a software. So mainly, if the software is intended to just transfer some data from people to people, like the electronic health record, etc. So is it an SAMD, and which class is it?
Yeah, I mean, if it's just transferring data, it's not a medical device. It depends on, there are sometimes medical device software products out there that do not have a user interface. They're just backend algorithms. That's possible, but they still do something with the data. So if it's just purely transferring data, so like a pure electronic health record system is not a medical device because it's just the same data as it has get from somewhere. But as soon as it does something with it, like interpreting, aggregating for medical purposes, then you get into this kind of framework. Or if you already have done something up front with the data and then you transfer it. So you have a backend algorithm, he's doing something with the data and then send it to somewhere into another database or towards an API to a clinical information system. Then this backend, of course, this software will very likely be a medical device, but purely transferring data, no.
It's like an email Outlook, if I can say. It's like if you say Outlook is a medical device because it's just transferring data, but as soon as there is no transformation, modification, prognosis, decision, etc., so then it's not really a device. I mean, we have also a common thinking that as soon as it is a software that is working inside an hospital or a healthcare facility, it becomes a medical device, but it's not. It's mainly the indication for use, what it is used for. As soon as there is maybe an algorithm that makes some calculation, decision, etc., then maybe it's becoming a medical device. But otherwise, it's just not that at all. So something that to be careful on. I have some example. I mean, I have some people are asking me some examples for, is it a medical device? I mean, which class is it? So let's go through maybe some of them. So incontinence management for elder care software, including intended for bed sores prevention, class 1 or 2A. I don't know exactly how it's working, this one, but
funny thing. Oliver, please correct me. I would, from written as a text, I would say it is class 1. If it is a medical device, it is class 1.
Yeah.
Depending on what it does. If it takes information from the patient, from the human, for like time when it was toilet, when it changed the diapers and all that stuff, when it takes time and calculated, so the bad source, that would be a class 1. So for my if it's just it is just a routine from the elderly care system, then it would be, from my experience, no medical device. But it's a funny question. It's a very good question.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Well, so it can be none, depending on what this incontinence management does. That's too generic here. But if you think about the typical incontinence management functionalities, even things like pelvic floor exercising or something like that, I would still see that as class 1.
Okay. Another one here quickly. So if we are measuring a body temperature, so will this fall under class 1M or class 1? I would say class 2A, but I don't know.
You mean the MDCG example?
Yeah, I think I suppose.
That's a good thing, because for being a 1M, you really have to also have units as defined in the definition of a measurement for measurements. And I think the example does not provide units; it just provides colors, and therefore it does not fall under the definition.
Stefan?
Actually, body temperature measurement. Body temperature is a vital physiological parameter where its fast change can lead to severe problems. Fiber. If it's outside of the body and it shows a measuring of a body, and that's a question that's very well phrased. It shows a measuring. If it is including the measuring by an app, by a skin app, refraction, however kind of technology you can use, I don't know, and then it has a very high likelihood to be a class 1M, like all other fiber thermometers, or even worse. For only showing the values, that is pretty funny, because if the value showing it in a real measuring a body temperature means showing a value in Celsius, Fahrenheit, or Kelvin, and therefore it qualifies as a medical device of the class. In that cases, I would aim to be perspective. But it is really only on that line of text. So I take an estimate and would give it into a class 2B.
Okay. Now I think, as we said, so it's really complicated because each software, each feature, each thing should be reviewed to really evaluate if this is really a class 1, 2A, 2B, or what it is exactly. So it's really difficult to make a case for all your examples without really knowing everything on the back. But also an interesting question here, which is, does the software connectivity impact the software classification? I'm not sure, but I don't think, but...
There's the typical answer you can give. It's called, it depends. But in most of the cases, I would say no. It really, we would need more context here. I can't think of an example now where it directly impacts the software classification, because the software classification is about the intended purpose and not about any kind of functionality and connection you have. Of course, you have to reflect this in your risk management, but for the risk classification, I don't see a really impact here.
Yeah, me too. I don't think too also. Okay. Last thing that I wanted also to alert, to remind to people. So mainly it's about the transition period that we have. So if you remember, so we have now a voted extension of the transition period for the EU MDR. And what is the consequence then for those products in terms of classification? One thing that is important here is the fact that we have some class 1 device that will remain class 1, software device that are class 1 that will remain class 1. So those devices should normally already be MDR certified, self-certified as class 1. If you have some class 2B, class 3 device that are going through the process, so then there is maybe some transition period because they have already a C certificate. We have class 1M, class 2, etc. And we have the last one, which is class 1 up classified. So mainly if you are a class 1 device under the EU MDD, and because of MDR, you are now becoming a class 2A, 2B, or 3, or class 1M if we have the class 1M there. Then we have this still, we are still under this extension period. And for a classified product, this is until the 31st of December 2028. So it means that you can continue to sell your device under class 1 until the end of this transition period, unless there is a significant change to a software. So just maybe for as a last point to discuss. So when we say significant change of the software, so can we say that cyber security threat or this kind of thing where you are changing your software because there is some updates due to some changes of for security, etc. Can we say that those are kind of significant changes that can impact also this transition period here?
Munir, sorry, just because I think it's important. I think for the MDD class 1 up, we have to mention these conditions, because otherwise everyone might pop out to the champagne to 2028. Of course, you have some conditions here. You have to have your QMS in place under MDR, and you have to have this contract with the notified body in 2024.
True.
So it's not just chilling until 2027. There's some homework within the next 12 months to do. So that's
exactly. So 26th of May 2024, you have to have a contract that is signed with the notified body. You have to have a quality management system per Article 10.9. So yeah, there are some conditions. It's not like you can just move to this thing. So yeah, as you said, maybe people already took some champagne here because of that, but no, those dates are really important. Also, I should maybe have placed that here. So the date of 26th of May 2024, which is a condition to go beyond until the 31st of December 2028. So don't wait until last moment, if I can say, to get your notified body agreement. You have to get your notified body agreement before the 26th of May 2024. And this can be a challenge if, just get a signature, an application that is signed and approved with them can be helpful then. Okay, so
one second to that slide. Can we please remove always that word self-certified?
Can we?
It's self-declared.
Self-declared.
The class 1, because I always hear a lot about we have a certified class 1 medical device, and I say no, you don't.
Okay, I will do that.
That is something which is so often, and oh wow. All right.
You ask for it is there.
Yeah, that's agile software.
I've just seen that in that slide and said, okay, self-declared. Now it is perfect, because that is. Unfortunately, I also had some companies being sued by saying we have a certified class 1 medical device by different companies, and they have been sued because it's not a certified device.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As we say, words are really important. So thanks for clarifying that.
Even if I think we all know what we mean with that, and we should not take that too much into it, but it is unfortunately so many bad people out there.
Exactly. So as we said, so what do you think about, as we said, of this transition? So we have this significant change. So what about software and significant change? Because we know that software can change a lot with a lot of updates. So is this something that can really be where software manufacturers should be really afraid?
Afraid? Oh.
I don't know afraid, but mainly.
No manufacturer shall be afraid of changes, and so shall be afraid of the MDR.
Yeah,
it's a task they need to do.
Exactly, it's mandatory. So what we had, if I remember, on the MDCG guidance for significant change for software, like a threat, like a cybersecurity threat, if you are making some changes like that, this is not considered a significant change. If you are changing because there is an issue on the market and you are updating because of a recall or whatever, then it's not also a significant change, because it's better to make this change than to not do it. So it's mainly the point, and you will not just say, oh, I will not make the change, otherwise I'll go to the EU MDR and I'm not ready for it. You have to do the change anyway. So there are a lot of things also like that people have some confusion of. Yeah. So it's why it's mainly also important to inform about that.
One second. We'll look at that point in the common human sense. When you want to do something better, which creates less harm, it should be possible. If you think about restructuring, then it's not possible. But if you think like something, you got seen that you have an CVE and it would affect you, you should do that because it makes your device safer. And then whenever you have doubts about that, look into the, how's it called? Recitals on the MDR. And that tells you the software and also the device shall be safe, and you shall maintain the safety and the effectiveness of the device.
Exactly.
It should be possible to do that in a good way.
Yeah, no, it's clear. I have just a few more questions that are also interesting. So here one from Mehdi that says Article 3.3 of the MDR says if a software influences the use of a device, then software falls into device class.
But I think there's nothing more than we can say. We agree because it's Article 3.3, but
it's written like that. So.
We need some more context here. What's the reason why he's saying it?
So I think as we talk about class 1, 2A, 2B, 3, etc., so the point is also to say that if there is a link between a software and maybe a hardware device and they are working together, and if the hardware device is already classified as class 2B, you cannot classify the software as class 1. If I can say it's class 2B also. I think it's mainly the context to say like it's one system together.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention this implementing rule. One of the most important ones for software, because it can have an effect. But you can connect it to other devices, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you get the same classification. It depends whether you really have an influence on the internal purpose of the other device. If it's just a connection, for example, you read out of this other device and nothing else, that's not an influencing of the other device.
Okay. So I just had Mehdi that says again, I have things software driving or influencing the use of a medical device is not a medical software. It's confusing.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So where to start?
I mean, we have few minutes only before.
Yeah. So what the MDCG guidance was trying to say is that you have a software, let's say classically embedded in your medical device, and of course, if it tends, for example, to drive it, because it's the software of this device, it doesn't have a user interface, just the software, the firmware internally that drives the device. Then the MDCG guidance wants to say, then this is not a medical device on its own. This software, you have to see it as a holistic device, and the software should always have a medical purpose on its own or in combination with something else. And indeed, the other one from the MDR is just to make sure that if you then have a software as a medical device and then you connect it to a medical device, a different one, for example, and you influence it, then you might have the same class unless your software is even higher already. Then you remain in the same class, because then you have the other implementing rule that says if you have several classes that apply, you stick to the one with the strictest rule, the highest class on your product.
Stefan?
Yeah, it's nothing to add. It's it is not very nicely written for those who are not native Englishmen.
Okay, great. And Mehdi, thank you for the answer. So Great. I know there are a lot of other questions that are there, but yeah, we are closing now the hour, so we should maybe stop now. So really, thank you, Stefan and Oliver, for all the support and I think clarification, because I think it was really needed. In case people that are listening to this episode now, if you have some questions, so you can continue to ask maybe the question on the chat here, and Oliver or myself or Stefan can also start to continue to answer to them. Otherwise, you can directly connect with Stefan and Oliver, and then reach out to them if they can help you for anything there. Okay, so Stefan, Oliver, it was really a pleasure. Thank you. Just wanted to say that this episode was recorded live, but it will be available next week again for people to rewatch that on the YouTube channel. So if they're interested to look at it again. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll be happy really to help you. Okay, Oliver, Stefan, thank you for your support.
Thanks also. It was really a pleasure.
You're welcome.